All right, let's see here. Who's in charge here? What is this? It says the stream is going to start at 7 a.m. and then they play 8 minutes of music. Who is running this show? What is the deal? Oh, that's me. Hi, I'm in charge of doing that stuff. It's my fault. Hope you're doing well this morning. Greetings from the nominal NASA spaceflight studio. I use that term in name only, sort of like a board length as opposed to anything else. Let me know how things are doing this morning. Are you hearing me okay? Can you see me? Hopefully everything's working okay. I mean, I'm watching the stream here and I am appearing, so it seems things are working. But I'm Das. I'll be the studio host here from the NASA Spaceflight Studios. Again, in name only because it's the spare bedroom at my house. I just have a green screen and camera and stuff. But 5x5, there you go. NASA Spaceflight checking in. DYU89, how you doing this morning? Working great, clear sound and video. Sound good, pick good, y'all good, coming through good on my end. Hey, dude. Hey, MP3 Neptune, how you doing? Hello, what? Me? No, man. I'm not Elon. Shave? I need to shave? I probably do. Ancient Jiu-Jitsu, it's super early over here. I got up at 6 o'clock to start spooling things up here. We started the stream at 7. Chris G is actually sitting in traffic on the way out of the Cape. You can see if we head over to DOS right quick. DOS, how's the traffic looking out of the Cape? Well, actually, DOS, thanks. The traffic out of the Cape isn't great right now. Chris was waiting in line to get into NASA. If you heard news, I believe it was yesterday, our buddy Jimmy B, Jim Bridenstine with NASA, saying that all the facilities went into level 3 preparedness, level 3 in the response scale, I guess, which means critical personnel only. So when we got that coming through the Twitter pipe yesterday, it looked, we were wondering, well, are we going to have access to actually stream this launch for you? Remember, Chris Gebhardt, Julia are taking the camera out to the press site, and they were intending to live stream from the press site so we would get our own camera views of the launch. And when we got that announcement yesterday about the level 3, the Operation Readiness level 3 or whatever it's called, you could tell who's not the reporter around here, whatever it's called. We didn't know if we were going to be able to actually take the camera there to the press site today, but Chris G contacted SpaceX and was able to get confirmation that he was headed in today and they would be giving us permission to actually stream. So he's running a little bit later than anticipated. He is in traffic. I believe he's made it in the gate, if I'm not mistaken. I can certainly, I could ask him right quick. Let me just text Chris right quick and just ask him how he's doing. How you doing? Question mark. Because that's how we do this, right? This is how you doing. You in? Question mark. I'm literally texting him to see what the deal is. It was interesting because when the announcement about the level 3 operations came through, the critical personnel only for NASA, the photographers had already set out the remote cameras, right? So you know the remote cameras that are sound operated and they're on the tripods and they're left literally right next to the rocket, and they get those crazy engine shots and pad shots when it's taken off. The cameras that are there where it's not safe for people to be were already deployed. So all the photographers had already put their gear out, and then the announcement came through and we're like, whoa, the cameras are out there. Are they going to sit out there until this whole thing blows over? But we did talk with SpaceX. Chris G talked with SpaceX, and things are going normally this morning here. Everything else that's going on. Hey, Raj. I'm doing well this morning. How are you? You live stream on Twitch? I may be on Twitch a little bit later. It was a little bit too early for me to try and run both streams. You know I do want to try and run both streams. But it was a little early for me this morning to try and juggle 2 streams at once. So over here, it's looking like Chris Gebhardt has confirmed that he's made it through the gate. Thank you, sir. I'll tell him. And if he's through the gate, it's probably like I'd say it's another 10 minutes to the VAB. Give him 10 minutes to set up. So we'll probably have Chris G online here somewhere around 7:30, a little bit after 7:30. So in the meantime, I will keep you company, and we will do a little bit of a recap on what the mission's going to be here today. This is the Starlink launch. And how do we have it titled on the live stream? It's SpaceX Starlink version 1.0, so version 1.0 of the Starlink satellites, because SpaceX rapidly improving things, rapid iterations, etc. This is version 1.0, and it's L5, but it's the 6th Starlink mission, because the first Starlink mission was sort of a bonus Starlink mission, right? So this is the 6th launch of Starlink satellites that SpaceX is doing to here. Of course, Starlink is the SpaceX broadband internet platform. Who even knows these days, how many satellites they're going to deploy total? What's the number up to? 5,000, 10, like a huge number of satellites that are operating or supposed to operate in low Earth orbit, bringing broadband internet to people who want to put a pizza box outside of their house. Or on top of their car, referring, of course, to Elon's tweet where he said that the Starlink transmitter from the ground, like the base station you would need in order to talk to a Starlink satellite, would be about the size of a pizza box, was the last I heard. So it's not quite the same as like 4G, like your modem gets data, right? Or sorry, your phone gets data. You're going to need a little bit larger antenna than a regular cell phone would have on it to talk to a Starlink satellite. Elon did say it would be about the size of a pizza box, but I'd put a pizza box on top of my car if it meant that I had broadband internet wherever I went and didn't have to worry about 4G network coverage. I mean, you could stream like backpacking trips into the mountains and stuff like that as long as you made a hat out of a Starlink relay, but whatever. That's what's going on today. SpaceX, this is their 6th mission. They're doing 60 Starlink satellites. I think those satellites are like 250, 260 kilograms each. And so that does make this a recoverable first stage. They're going to launch the booster, and they plan to land the booster out on the drone ship, right? They're also trying to recover, catch, I guess is the right term, the fairings as well. So this mission, there's a couple tweets. Michael, hey, if you could grab me the tweet that Brady Keniston put together that had the different illustrations on it. This is supposed to be the 5th reflight. Well, the 4th reflight, the 5th flight, I guess is the right way to say it, right, of this booster core. So it's already done 4 missions, which means it's launched and landed successfully 4 different times, and this would be the 5th time that this single booster, it's the first time they're doing this, it's the first time they're doing the 5th launch of a booster. It's the 4th reflight, but the 5th launch total, because the first one's not a reflight. Whatever. Here, check this out. Here's a cool tweet from Brady Keniston, the favoritist, who is one of the NASA spaceflight photographers that hang out with us and makes all the excellent content. Can y'all see that? Let's make that I bet I can point it at this later. Look, I'm like the weatherman. This is an actual photo, I believe, that Julia took. And Brady went through and he added some annotations to it showing the number of flights that each part of the booster had done, right? So you got the 5th flight on the booster down there, the core. It's the first flight of the second. I gotta look. I'm not that good of a weatherman. I gotta look and make sure I'm pointing to the right thing. It's the first flight of the second stage. Of course, SpaceX not reusing the second stages. Elon had previously said that he was looking into reusing it, but then they decided, I believe, to put all their energies into Starship instead of something of maybe a limited utility like reflying the second stage. And then the fairings are actually on their second flight. So 5th flight for the booster, first flight for the second stage. That's normal. SpaceX not reusing those at this time. And second flight for the fairings, of course not pictured, the Starlink satellites that are inside the fairing. The 60 satellites clearly have not been launched before because those are not reusable. They burn up when they go back down in the atmosphere. So that is a cool tweet. If you want to follow these people for more content like that, there's a link to the tweet in chat. I'm K Space Academy. That's me. Whenever I type things into YouTube chat, it appears under my name with a little wrench next to it. So if you want to check out the that tweet or maybe follow Brady there, he is one of the fantastic photographers, not out at this launch, but that helps us out here at NASA Spaceflight. Here at NASA Spaceflight, as I discuss being here at NASA Spaceflight from my house in Charlotte, North Carolina. Oh, hey, and that's me right there. Yeah, that's actually my Twitter. I'm K Space Academy on Twitter. So thank you, NASA Spaceflight. I appreciate you. Let's do this. We have a couple minutes. I just heard from... Wait, I should do this. Like, oh, this just in from Chris. I don't have an earpiece in. I just reading texts. Chris Gebhardt says that he's parking out at the Kennedy Space Center press site right now, and he's probably, I'm going to say 5 or 10 minutes till he's ready. He's got to get the tripod out, camera on top of the tripod, everything plugged in, the broadcast units that we use. It's called a Live View Solo. That thing needs to be booted up and come online and stuff like that, and the modems all need to connect. He's got 3 modems out there today to split up the video signal and give us a nice uplink. But he should be online in just a bit. Oh, and there's a link to Chris B's Twitter as well. Nice. Canada's launch on Sunday, made it to Merritt Island, came today even earlier and got blocked by security. Anybody know why? Carelli, Merritt Island? I'm not sure what exactly what part of Merritt Island are you talking about there? Were you trying to go to Playa Linda or somewhere? Because with the coronavirus things that are going on, I wouldn't be surprised if there were some public gathering areas that were being shut down. You've heard the news about the instructions not to gather in groups of 50, 100. Is there guidelines? I don't think that that's a law in Florida. You go to San Francisco or something like that, and San Francisco is straight up on lockdown due to the coronavirus. But I think I could not. I don't know. I haven't seen that news specifically, but I wouldn't be surprised if security was keeping people from congregating in some of those areas, the typical launch viewing areas. Again, I don't have any firsthand information about that. I haven't seen a tweet from Titusville Police or KSC Security or anything like that. If anybody has something like that, let me know. But that is a complete possibility. The good news is you'll be able to see it from anywhere back in Titusville. You won't be able to get as close as Playa Linda if security is not letting you go out there. But again, it may have something to do with the trying to keep people from gathering in groups. So, getting some questions about the SpaceX stream as well. It looks like the SpaceX live stream time is incorrect now. So if you're looking at this official SpaceX stream, it looks like the official SpaceX stream time is incorrect. We should have in the upper... How big is my camera? Not that big. How big is my green screen is the real question, because if I reach too far, I lose a hand. But up in the upper left-hand corner of your stream, there's a countdown timer. It shows you the official countdown going to the official time, just around 56 minutes, just under 57 minutes until launch here, which is scheduled for 9:22, I think. Something like that, yeah. Surfside Nomad says, I'm at Jetty Park, Port Canaveral, Florida, shut down to all visitors. That was announced. So I believe a day or two ago, that was all over Twitter, where they shut down Jetty Park. I did see that announced by Jetty Park. I also know that the Exploration Tower out there was shut down as well. So the official stream says 3 hours. The official stream would, unless SpaceX has made a schedule that they haven't announced to us, that is not correct. Our information that we've got right now is that launch is scheduled to go off in about 56 minutes. So that's what I'm going to keep going with until I see an official announcement from somebody, or somebody tells me on the back channel that, oh, no. They actually, pretty sure that's the time. While we wait for Chris to get set up here, I do have this. And I can go ahead and roll back the tape. Look, I'm literally just putting this in a browser window. It's not rocket science. But we can roll back the tape, and we can actually look really quickly. This was the launch abort that happened. So this was the official SpaceX stream. Counting down, you can see T-minus 10 seconds right there. And the Falcon is already running the show here. And you see it get all the way down to 4, 3, 2, 1. There's a flash. There's a big old plume of smoke over here. But the rocket doesn't go anywhere. And that was that T-minus 0 abort that occurred. Information from SpaceX told us that this happened because one of the Merlin engines on the first stage fired up and then was reporting numbers that were out of family, was the terminology I heard. It was something about a power thing, is what the official SpaceX livestream said. So the rocket called an audible and said, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not going right now. The rocket actually scrubbed itself due to the computer systems, which are literally checking thousands of variables. Oh, hi. Wait, that's slightly awkward. Let's just go back over here. The rocket computer systems that are constantly checking thousands of variables, sensors and pressures and temperatures and just all sorts of things that it has to check. It saw something that it didn't like, and it decided that it was not going to space today because the numbers were out of family, which just means they're not within the range that they normally want the numbers to be, right? Didn't get any more information than that I saw. It was family trouble. Yes, it was family trouble. It was a little static fire. Nice, Paulo. It was a little static fire. But that is what happened. It got all the way down. One more time. 4, 3, 2. Pardon the YouTube interface there, but whatever. You saw the smoke. You saw some little puffs. And the rocket did not go to space. So, again, that was what has happened on the last launch attempt here. They pushed it back to today. They're going to give this another go today. And I can't stand being in range of my family either. Nice, Blue Rhythm. Oh, no. That's what was going on there, though. So hopefully we get another good launch attempt today. Hopefully we actually get a launch today, and we will see what the deal with that is. While we stand by for Chris, because I'm going to get a notification here whenever Chris comes online, we will... Oh, it actually looks like Chris is online. So let's grab Chris's camera here. Let's make sure everything's good with his camera. Interesting. San Francisco. We're just going to roll with it. Just one second. We're going to look at one quick technical issue here. Let me talk to Chris. I'm asking Chris to verify his uplink from his camera. So he's out there and he has multiple modems, and I can log into that broadcast unit from here at the studio. And can you pass that on, Michael? In fact, I could just pop over here and I could say it out loud. I still have Discord muted, so I'm not going to be able to hear people talking in Discord. But Chris, if you can hear me, I need you to check your uplink for me and make sure that the modems are online. Just make sure those modems are online, because I'm not seeing you on all the modems.
They are.
And the other thing I could do is I could actually unmute him so I can hear what he's responding to. Let's try that right quick. We'll give this a little test and see what happens. I don't actually know if this is going to work or not, but it's how we learn, right? Mic check. Chris, can you hear me right now?
I sure can, Das. Can you hear me?
I hear you, but Chris is not talking.
Okay, Chris is not talking right now.
Yes,
Thank you,
I am.
And what
No,
you
yes,
just said
I
would have
am.
been
Yes, I am.
broadcast. So there was Chris. Was that Chris talking? Okay,
Yes,
Chris
that
is
was
talking
me.
now.
I'm talking. I was talking the
Okay,
whole time.
good. Well, I got you now. Yeah, I can hear you now. So it looks like, Chris, you are now running on 2 of the 3 that we were working on. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to you. Again, this is Chris Gebhardt. He's out at the Cape. He's got his camera set up to bring you live footage of the SpaceX Starlink launch that's coming up in under an hour. Chris, you are go for the live.
All right. Well, welcome to a nice morning here in Florida and at the Kennedy Space Center. A gorgeous sunrise happening right off camera. Let me zoom back just a little bit here so you can see exactly what we're looking at. I mean, absolutely gorgeous here this morning. A nice sunrise to the south of the pad, just over the Atlas pad here. Over on Cape Canaveral, but just absolutely gorgeous. Weather not anticipated to be a huge problem for today. The main threat yesterday was cumulus clouds that have once again not materialized, and landing weather and launch weather criteria were all expected to be very good and very favorable for the liftoff of the 6th Starlink flight today. Now, this flight will bring the total number of Starlink satellites launched to 362. 360 of those launched on dedicated Starlink missions of the Falcon 9, along with the 2 test satellites, Tintin A and Tintin B, which were launched on a mission from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California a couple of years ago. Now, one of these Starlink satellites has already been deorbited, so assuming a successful launch today, that will leave 361 in orbit. A few things to go over here. Because I know a lot of people are probably wondering. So first off, if you have any questions, and good morning, good evening, good night to wherever you are around the world, please let us know in chat exactly where you are watching from. We love the fact that we're a global community here at NSF, and the world definitely needs something positive to focus on right now, and a huge shout out to all of you who are in quarantine or self-isolating because of the coronavirus. So hello to all of you. If you have questions, please throw them up in chat. My producers, Michael and Das, will forward those along to me to get those answered for you on air. So if you've got questions, throw them up. If you had questions that you asked the first time round on Sunday, but either we didn't get to or you thought it was a really good question and you'd like people to know again, go ahead and ask it again and we will get it answered for you. So a few things to go over for this particular mission. After liftoff, the Falcon 9 will perform a pitch and roll maneuver off 39A and align itself onto the proper azimuth or trajectory to head northeast from the Kennedy Space Center into a 55-degree inclination orbit, meaning it goes 55 degrees north and 55 degrees south of the equator on every orbit. The 60 Starlink satellites will separate roughly 14 minutes after liftoff, while the entire rocket is in an elliptical orbit. Those satellites will then be gradually raised up to their 350-kilometer checkout orbit, where they'll undergo initial activation and checkout operations before being raised up to their 550-kilometer operational orbit. After liftoff and after first stage burn, the stages will separate as normal, and the first stage will continue on a ballistic trajectory toward the drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, which is located about 630 kilometers northeast of the Kennedy Space Center and about 200 kilometers off the coast of Charleston, South Carolina. That area is where the booster will attempt a landing on Of Course I Still Love You. The two payload fairings, which are also being reflown from a prior Starlink mission after separation, will descend toward the fairing catcher ships Go Mystery and Go Mischief, which are located about 730 kilometers northeast of the Kennedy Space Center off the coast of North Carolina. In all, we are SpaceX is reflying a booster. This is the first time a booster will fly 5 times. And the two payload fairings are also being reused, and both of those will be attempted to, and SpaceX will attempt to recover both of those many hundreds of kilometers northeast and away from the Space Center. I know a lot of you are probably wondering exactly what happened on Sunday. Per public information, what we know is that we got to just under a second prior to liftoff before the Falcon 9's onboard computers detected a power issue with one of the Merlin 1D engines and was able to successfully abort the launch sequence safely to prevent that rocket from lifting off. That was not the first time that the Falcon 9 had undergone an on-pad abort before. It had suffered, it has gone through those before, but more importantly, the team gets to practice what would happen in the event of an on-pad abort every single mission because of the static fires. The static fires not only allow the team to practice a complete launch campaign for the Falcon 9, including ignition of the engines for engine health checks and overall rocket health checks, but it also allows them to practice the procedures that they would go through in the event of an on-pad abort. So they were well versed in what to do in the immediacy of that abort. But of course, Falcon 9 is very automated and performed a lot of those steps itself to safe itself and begin backing out of the count to a safe place. And my apologies, I misspoke. A 53-degree inclination orbit, not a 55-degree. My apologies for that. It is still morning and I haven't had a lot of coffee yet. So Manus wants to know, after how many launches will Starlink internet begin broadcasting to the public? That's an excellent question. We don't know the exact number of launches, but Elon and Gwen Shotwell have both said that Starlink will most likely they would most likely be able to start offering initial services in the northern latitudes around 2020, by 2020, so sometime this year, where it would take more launches to achieve that wider scale release to the public in the United States and in Canada. The last we heard publicly was that the regulatory process for approval to offer Starlink internet services in Europe was still undergoing, or was still working its way through all the official European Communication Commission's channels and everything like that. So we don't have an exact figure, although mid-2020 was kind of thrown out a couple of times. That they're more or less on track with kind of where they wanted to be with Starlink. Not exactly, but more or less where they wanted to be. So you know, as they move through the year, we'll definitely get more information on that. And of course, this assumes that launches will be permitted to continue here from the Kennedy Space Center and the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station as the United States deals with the coronavirus outbreak here, and the various quarantines and center closures that are coming. Yesterday, the Kennedy Space Center and all of NASA announced that it was going to what's known as Stage 3 readiness for the coronavirus outbreak, meaning that mandatory telework for all personnel except those deemed mission critical. Media were allowed to come in for this launch, though we do not have any confirmation that as long as the centers remain at this Stage 3 readiness that would be the case for future missions this month or into April. So we will simply have to see how this all plays out, both from a public health standpoint and people coming into the Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, but also from a launch team perspective, because if members of the team start to get sick, then launch operations would have to be halted because you wouldn't have all of those personnel that you need on hand to continue with various launch campaigns. So Pascal wants to know, when in the ignition sequence does the engine power check happen, which triggered the abort during the last launch attempt? So here's kind of the thing. It's a great question with how engine startups work in rocketry. Computers are constantly monitoring all of the parameters. So this engine power check, the systems are constantly monitoring the power that is flowing to the engines and how power is flowing in, not just into, but through those engines as well throughout the whole startup sequence. But as the startup sequence unfolds, the parameters that the computers use to verify the health of the engines prior to liftoff change as those engines come up to full strength. So it's kind of an ongoing process. And there's, there becomes a point just from a sheer timing perspective and how fast and how slow it takes signals to travel. Even though signals travel very, very fast, there becomes a point where you can't abort anymore and you would commit to liftoff. This clearly happened before that sequence, but but this particular abort was triggered very, very close to liftoff, again after we got under the T-1 second mark. In fact, if you go back and listen to the SpaceX live stream from Sunday's attempt, you can actually hear the person say 3, 2, 1 liftoff, because that's how close they got before the abort actually tripped within the system. So I hope that did answer your question, because it is kind of a rolling check with changing parameters as the engines come up online. So I hope that answers it for you. Carlo Bola, thanks so much for the super chat, man. We really appreciate it. Moon Man, again, thank you. We really do appreciate it. I'm here by myself today. I believe Julia is at work or stuck in traffic that I was stuck in earlier, trying to get into the Space Center. But we really do love bringing you all of this, and as long as it is safe for me to continue to come out and bring you these launches and live stream them, we will continue to do so, of course following all of the necessary safety and guidelines that we've been given here. But we really do appreciate your support, and I do hope from wherever you're watching around the world, Carlo Bola, I know you're somewhere in the European Union, given the Euro sign in front of your super chat. So I hope everyone's staying safe around the world. Jared, thank you too. Because yeah, we really do appreciate it, and every little bit helps us put that money back into bringing you these live streams and maintaining all of our equipment and our modems and everything like that. So we really, really do appreciate it. So Zachary, real quick, so Moonman says coffee for Chris. Yes, I do need coffee when I leave here, and says thanks again for sharing with us. CRS-20 was amazing. I can't wait to make it back there. Jared says coffee for all. I agree, coffee for all. Carl, Harry, thanks so much too for the super chats. How many cups of coffee can we get Chris? Oh man, well, we can get Chris a lot of cups of coffee. Whether Chris's heart can handle all those cups of coffee is a different it's a different story. But Zachary S. also wants to know, what is the advantage of inserting the Starlink satellites into an elliptical orbit? Does it have to do with saving onboard propellant? It's a great question. Elliptical orbits can sometimes give you a little bit more room to play with in terms of the orbit raising procedure and how satellites spread out. A lot of payloads are inserted into elliptical orbits because instead of circular orbits, just because the efficiency once you're actually in orbit and above Earth's atmosphere, the satellites can end up doing a lot more of the work once they are in orbit. Even if that's elliptical, in terms of raising their orbits, and again, in terms of allowing them to spread out at different rates, because one thing that they can do by inserting into an elliptical orbit is they can actually spread some of those satellites out a lot faster. So if you raise a satellite's orbit, it actually goes slower in terms of the overall time it takes it to complete one orbit than satellites at a lower level in orbit. So you can start spacing them out a lot quicker by inserting them into an elliptical orbit and then having their Hall thrusters do the work of raising that orbit. But we should note that even though it's an elliptical orbit, it's a very safe elliptical orbit. I believe, if my memory is serving, that the last Starlink mission, which was the first to use this elliptical orbit insertion, placed the satellites into roughly a 350 by 190 kilometer orbit. We would assume that that's what's going to happen this time as well. But yeah, that's a lot of why that's one of the reasons why they would opt to use this particular orbit. The satellites are capable of doing that with their onboard propellant in terms of raising their orbits, and it allows you to spread it out a little bit quicker. Quickly scrolling through here, so Allosaurus 87, great name, great dinosaur too, by the way, wants to know, is all the smoke from the last try? So that is not actually smoke that you're seeing, that is fog. This time of year in Florida, based on our temperatures and our dew points and everything like that, it's very common to have low-level ground fog in the mornings that burns off very, very quickly. From the last attempt, which was about an hour later than this attempt will be, the fog had almost completely burned off by the time we got to T0 when we almost lifted off on Sunday. So this is very normal for this time of year here in Florida, and it poses no risk or launch weather issue for the Falcon 9 today. So yeah, that's all we're seeing. The conditions should actually make for excellent venting of the gaseous oxygen in the super cold propellants that will begin flowing into the Falcon. Oh, that are flowing in, or should be flowing into the Falcon 9 here right about now. Correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but I believe we are 35 minutes or just under 35 minutes away from liftoff, correct? All right, correct. Michael's going to be checking my math because Chris doing math without coffee is interesting and can get really interesting. So yeah, 35 minutes away from liftoff. At this point, the Falcon 9 is fueling. At T-minus 35 minutes, the automated sequence kicks in, and Falcon 9 has control of the countdown and all of the procedures needed to get it to liftoff here from pad 39A. This includes, sorry, I'm laughing at something I heard in my ear from one of my producers about a parachute deployment. That was pretty funny. But yeah, so the fueling process, once the Falcon 9 enters its auto sequence, the liquid oxygen, the densified liquid oxygen in RP1 is now flowing into the first stage of the Falcon 9. RP1 kerosene is flowing into the second stage. At about the T-minus 17 minute mark, that kerosene load into the second stage will be completed, and we'll transition into stable replenish, which just means enough is being pumped in to finish that fueling process and account for anything that's bleeding off, or boiling off rather, from that RP1 tank. And then at T-minus 16 minutes is when the densified liquid oxygen begins flowing into the second stage. Carl, thanks so much for the super chat. And Carl wants to know, where will the first point-to-point Starship points be? Oh, awesome. Switching gears a little bit. Yes. So your questions for everyone watching, your questions can be about Falcon 9 and Starlink today. They can be about Starship. They can be about anything that has to do with spaceflight and space exploration. It doesn't just have to be about SpaceX or today's mission. So Carl's asking, first point-to-point for Starship ports be. It's a great question. They have not said, and to be fair, we don't really know. Boca Chica is being, Boca Chica will be the site that they launch from first, the launch site here at pad 39A. You can't see it, you can't really see it right now, although if you were trying to look directly at it, on the left-hand side, or the right-hand side of the screen, you see a little tent structure sticking up out of the fog, and the launch mount for Starship is basically right there, maybe a little bit more to the left of that. I'll move the camera a little bit, but you can't see it yet because it's still behind the tree line, but that's one of Starship's launch pads that's being constructed by SpaceX. But yeah, we don't really know where the first Earth point-to-point will be. In a lot of ways it would make sense once they get there to utilize the launch and landing locations that they have around the world. So it could be possible with FAA and FCC approval that could be from Boca Chica to Texas. It could be Florida to, Boca Chica, Texas to Florida, or Florida to somewhere else. But that's really something that's very much to be determined right now, because the main focus and all of the effort with Starship right now is for the Mars colonization and the Mars transportation efforts for that particular rocket. And I know a lot of people were a little surprised that last September Elon did not give an update about Earth point-to-point, but that is still part of the plan. But the focus is really on that Mars mission and that Mars goal now. It's also entirely possible that the first point-to-point elements with this would be tested with a launch either from Boca Chica, Texas, or Kennedy Space Center, Florida, with landings on drone ships, just to help verify the accuracy of those landings. Whatever the FAA and FCC decide they're comfortable with, whatever they decide they're not comfortable with, SpaceX would have to prove that technology, just like they had to prove the landing precision of the Falcon 9 before they were allowed to perform a return to launch site landing here to the Kennedy Space Center or Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, which of course was their first successful landing a few years ago. So it's a great question, and it's definitely one we'll be following. Yeah, definitely. Matthew Odo wants to know, what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? Well, if I didn't know that, I would have to reprimand myself as being a very bad science fiction nerd. It is, of course, 42. Great question. Somewhere Mary Liz Bender is going, wait, someone just said 42. I like that, because that's her favorite number. She's a huge, she along with Ryan Shalinsky, two great and wonderful photographers out here. She is actually a huge, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on this now? Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fan, and we often text back and forth of all the instances where she encounters the number 42. So it's great to be a nerd, especially with that. So Ed wants to know, was the missed landing next to the drone ship human error or software error? Great question. So Ed is referring to, Ed is actually referring to the previous Starlink mission, which launched in February, where the booster performed a soft water landing next to the drone ship instead of reaching it. It's a great question. It was not human error, and it was not software error. It was actually the booster performing exactly as it was designed to do. So as it came back in to the atmosphere after it did its entry burn, and it went through a band of upper level winds, those upper level winds were a lot stronger than had been predicted by the weather authorities, and those winds actually blew the booster too far off course that its software logic realized that it likely didn't have enough propellant to safely correct its trajectory and safely land on the drone ship instead of impaling the drone ship if it ran out of fuel. So in those types of situations where the booster realizes it can't make it to its intended landing site, the software logic dictates that it abort to a soft water landing attempt away from the actual drone ship or away from LZ-1 and 2 here at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. And that's exactly what it did. So this was just a case of the weather prediction not being accurate, because we don't have weather balloons out there, or at least at that point we didn't have weather balloons out there like we do here at the Cape. So there was no way to actually monitor what the day of upper level winds were, and they just ended up being higher, and the booster performed exactly as it should have. So that's a great question. SpaceX has updated their modeling and updated the software that the boosters can use in terms of understanding how much propellant is left back in them to account for those types of things. And there are plans being worked to potentially be able to launch weather balloons at the landing recovery zones, just so the teams have a better idea and the booster can have a better idea of what types of conditions it might encounter as it comes on in for landing. So you can, yes, Das, I'm here. Okay. And as we were talking a little earlier, weather, of course, gorgeous. Weather is go for launch and landing. The All 60 Starlinks are go for launch. And you can see some venting as the super cold densified liquid oxygen fills the bottom part of, fills the booster. You can see some cryo venting and vapors moving away from the rocket there. Nice gentle breeze here at the pad and at the Kennedy Space Center. So we will see in a few minutes, we will see the big T-minus 20-minute vent in about 7 minutes from now. We'll see the big 20-minute vent. That's the big indication that everything's going well. From a fueling standpoint, of course, SpaceX not saying anything's going wrong is the bigger indication that everything's going well. So yeah, so again, if you're just joining us, I'm Chris Gebhardt, the Assistant Managing Editor over at NASASpaceflight. We are here live at the press site at the Kennedy Space Center, and you are looking live at the Falcon 9 on pad 39A. This is the 6th overall Starlink mission for SpaceX, the first that will launch from LC-39A at the Kennedy Space Center. All previous ones have launched from pad 40 at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. Today's mission, again, if you're just joining us, will bring the total number of Starlink satellites launched to 362 and the total number in orbit to 361 because one Starlink has been deorbited. Those numbers are calculated based on 60 Starlink satellites across 6 launches, which gets you 360, and the 2 test Starlinks, Tintin A and Tintin B, that were launched a couple of years ago on a Vandenberg Air Force Base mission launch into a polar orbit. So again, if you are watching from around the world, we do hope everyone is staying safe, especially if you're in a lot of the countries that have been hit hardest by the coronavirus outbreak, especially if you're in Italy and Western Europe right now, a lot of those countries on lockdown, from wherever you are around the US and Canada and around the world too. We just hope you're all staying safe. You know, we said earlier in the broadcast that as long as it's safe, relatively safe, for me to continue to come out, and as long as the centers continue to allow access to media and it's safe to do so, we will continue bringing you these live streams of these launches. But of course, if it becomes unsafe to do so, we will fall back to backup plans to still bring you these missions, but to ensure our safety and the safety of those around us as well. So MP3 Neptune, thanks so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. They say thank you for the live streaming this. It's so fascinating to me. It's awesome that you're also educating and informing people about these types of launches. Y'all are doing important work, and I appreciate it. So as we wait for that big T-minus 20-minute vent, I'm actually stationed at the Kennedy Space Center on the press site here. And I'm going to go ahead and move the camera a little bit so you can get a better idea of where I'm watching from. So I am 3 miles away from the launch pad, across the big turn basin here. at the Kennedy Space Center. So the turn basin is where the Apollo Saturn V stages, the shuttle's external fuel tanks, the SLS core stage and inner stage will be brought, or were brought and will be brought in by barge before they are transported over to the vehicle assembly building. So there's the vehicle assembly building. The big blue thing here is the countdown clock. So if you ever see a big wide angle, and I'm right to the right of that countdown clock, and there's the press site and all the press buildings and everything behind me. I'll swing back around here because you can see actually the portions of the mobile launcher platform for the SLS rocket inside of the vehicle assembly building, High Bay 3. There you can see also one of the former shuttle mobile launch platforms. Over there, unfortunately, the vehicle assembly building is blocking the mobile launch platform that Northrop Grumman has acquired and is updating for their Omega rocket. And as we swing around here, go a little bit slower so the autofocus can catch up with me. You can see some other support buildings out there. And then there is pad 39B where SLS and Omega will launch from. And as we swing back around, we will arrive back at LC-39A where the Falcon 9 is being fueled for today's launch. So, neat little tour of where I am. Hopefully that gives you a little better understanding of the layout here and where we're allowed to be and where we are allowed to watch these missions go from. I am 3 miles from pad 39A, which is the closest they allow the media to get. You can actually get closer to a Falcon 9 during its liftoff. The roadblock and the closest people can get is actually, if you look on Google Maps, and Michael, if we have this available to show, the closest you can actually get is where the crawler way from the vehicle assembly building to the pads at Kennedy split, with half of it going to B and half of it continuing all on to pad A. So you can see that right now. That's about as close as you can get to the Falcon 9 on 39A, based on the roadblocks for launches. So Arco wants to know, are the engines allowed to run dry upon landing, or do the engines still shut off if low fuel sensors are triggered? Yeah, so the engines always shut down when the low fuel sensors are triggered, because you don't want fuel, you don't want to run out of fuel or oxidizer as you're trying to perform a controlled explosion, which is basically what a rocket engine is. You don't want that happening because you don't want to run out of propellant while the engines are still going. So yeah, there are low-level cutoff sensors inside the Falcon 9. Of course, its computer logic also has some control over knowing how much propellant is pumped into it, how much propellant it's been using through those engines. But yes, there are safety steps in there to ensure that engines don't run dry. Because you never want that with rocketry. Matthew also wants to know, the Starship launch pad is uncomfortably close to the launch tower for Falcon 9. If there was ever a Starship accident, what would happen to pad 39A? I mean, they are close to one another. Yes, they're certainly within a blast radius of each other. But you also see SpaceX spending a lot of time at Boca Chica. And, oh, there's our big T-minus 20-minute vent starting. That is a whole bunch of gaseous oxygen that is venting out of the Falcon 9's first stage, venting all that out, clearing some space in those tanks so they can load more in. You do want, as you're loading oxygen into a rocket, it does boil off and you need to keep pumping more in. So it's best to pump out all the stuff that has boiled off. That's just kind of normal. It's how every single rocket works. What's kind of unique about the Falcon 9 is that there's no vent system that pulls it away from the rocket, and so it just vents right there from the transporter erector there. And it's really cool and it's really dramatic, especially with the different weather conditions. These plumes can look very, very different. But there is the big T-minus 20-minute vent, all going well with the Falcon 9. But sort of getting back to the question, Matthew, I mean, Is it a risk? Of course it's a risk, but you know, anything's really a risk here. When you're dealing with rocketry, and you know, you make everything as safe as you possibly can. You have backup options if you need them. But you know, SpaceX is really concentrating the Starship build, development, and flight test sequence from Boca Chica, Texas. A lot of that for the safety reasons. Boca is a much more isolated area than Cape Canaveral and the Kennedy Space Center. But also building and testing Starship in Texas removes a lot of the pressure from the launch schedule of the 2 launch pads here that SpaceX has between all of their Starlink missions and all of the commercial and government missions that they are contracted to fly over the next several years. So, you know, it is always a risk, but, you know, it's one of those risks that you have to weigh the pros and cons of, and you know, if consequences come from that, then you deal with those consequences. But you know, Pad 39A, you know, is very important, not just to the historic element of U.S. spaceflight and world spaceflight, but to SpaceX as well, because it is the only pad that they are capable of launching humans from right now. So they're not going to be taking any unnecessary risks with Starship at that pad. So, you know, it just kind of is what it is. It's a good question, and I understand where you're coming from with it. And sure, there's that possibility. But, you know, it's all about mitigating that possibility, mitigating that risk, and getting a system that works reliably time after time again, so that the risk of what you're talking about remains as low as possible. Bruce Matter wants to know, please explain how they are able to catch a fairing falling from the edge of space. That is a great question. So the fairings, once they pop off and separate from the second stage of the Falcon 9 and expose the Starlink satellites, are on ballistic trajectories. So they just continue on their track. And then they deploy parachutes and parafoils that they can, and the fairings, from what we understand, actually communicate down with the drone, the fairing catcher ships, to say where they are. And there's some degree of being able to steer those with the parafoil, but the fairing catcher ships are also very nimble and maneuverable out at sea, despite those huge nets and arms that they've got on them. So if you follow them along on marine traffic, you can see the fairing catcher ships rapidly changing position and location, and reversing and going forward, and rapidly changing speed, because the fairing catcher ships are trying to get underneath of the fairings as the fairings are communicating where they're coming down, and as the crews have visual on them as they parachute down toward the ocean. So that's how they can attempt to catch them in the nets. But the good thing about these payload fairings too, and how SpaceX has built them, is that if they should miss the fairing catcher ships, or winds at sea, you know, blow them too far away from the ships at the last second, they can soft land in the water and be scooped up out of the water by the ships and brought back to port and refurbished. And in fact, that's how we got these back as well, and it's how we got the first set of payload fairings that were reused from Arabsat 6A on the Starlink launch in November of last year. Is they parachuted down into the water, and they were fished out by recovery vessels, brought back, refurbished, and are flying again. So that's how they can get them back and catch them, but that's also how they can get them back if they do not catch them. Are there video? Yes, Das. Okay, and we are 15 minutes away from launch now. 8:01 here at the Kennedy Space Center, 12:01 UTC, heading toward our 8:16 Eastern, 12:16 launch of the Falcon 9. So as we continue to count down toward the real business end of our countdown, again, if you've got any questions, if you're just joining us, throw them up in the chat on YouTube. My producers are sending them across to me so that I can answer them. Some of the voices you hear me, some of the people you hear me talking to are my producers in the background. But yeah, if you've got any questions, please throw them up in chat. Even if you're really nervous to ask the question, go ahead and ask it, because I guarantee you, there are other people who want to ask that exact same question, but are also nervous to ask it as well. So go ahead and ask, no matter what the question is. It doesn't have to be about SpaceX or Starlink. It can be about anything spaceflight related. So Jimmy wants to know, are there any videos of the fairings coming from space? Yes, there are videos. In fact, SpaceX shared one of them, the Arabsat 6A payload fairings separating from a camera inside the payload fairings. And we have video that Elon and SpaceX have tweeted out of the payload fairings landing in the nets of the recovery ships as well. So we do have video of it. SpaceX has a lot more video than they have released as the cameras continue to function as throughout the whole descent of the fairings after they separate from the Falcon 9. Carl wants to know, did the launch tower change? I notice it has a white strip on the sides. The launch tower, yes. So, no, the white strip you are seeing on the side is the crew access arm that is fully retracted away. So for these satellite missions that are not using crew, SpaceX actually pulls that arm almost 180 degrees away from the rocket, so it sits almost flush against the tower. For crew launches, when we've really seen that arm in use, after it pulls away from Dragon, it only retracts about halfway to the 90-degree position. So that white stripe you're seeing on the tower is not actually a stripe on the tower, it's the white of the crew access arm. And in fact, it was reflecting sunlight. The glass on that arm was reflecting the sunlight as the sun rose a few minutes ago, and was absolutely gorgeous. But yes, that's what you're seeing there on the top of the tower. Legendoff, I hope I said your name correctly. Apologies if I did not. Wants to know, when is the next set of people going to the ISS, and can you watch it live? Great question. As of right now, the next crew launch up to the International Space Station is scheduled to occur on the 9th of April from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan on the Soyuz MS-16 mission. It will launch 2 cosmonauts and 1 American astronaut up to the International Space Station. And a few days later, a 3-person set of crew members on the station who are completing their mission will return to Earth. This will significantly reduce the number of crew on the station from 6 down to 3, and reduce the U.S. segment presence from 4 down to just 1. Now, right now, that launch is still planned to occur in April. Roscosmos had accredited media for that, but have canceled the media opportunities due to the outbreak of coronavirus. And the crew of that mission has also entered quarantine a bit earlier. The people who are involved in interacting with them are also in quarantine, and almost all of the public events that the crews launching from Baikonur participated in the weeks leading up to their launch have been canceled. This includes stuff that they've done for every single human launch over there in Kazakhstan, with of course the goal being to protect the 3 crew members so that we can be as certain as possible that none of them are infected with coronavirus before they launch to the International Space Station. So that is currently what. So that's currently where we stand right now with the crew launch. Okay, so here we're going to do some lightning round question and answers as we head toward the business end of our countdown. Before we do that, Christopher Keynes, thanks so much for the super chat. We really appreciate it. So lightning round questions. Moonman, how many reflights are SpaceX aiming for with the Falcon 9 booster? 10 reflights before it has to undergo some good and thorough checkouts, 100 reflights per booster. Anonymous person, great name, wants to know, what does SN mean regarding Starship? I believe it refers to either Starship number or serial number. SN1 being the first one, SN2, Starship number 2 being the second one, or serial number 2, but I believe that's what they stand for. So Matthew Odo wants to know, why did SpaceX wrap that material around the launch tower? So the launch towers are made of incredibly corrosive steel, and part of SpaceX's plan to reduce the amount of time And degradation to the steel tower at 39A was to put cladding on it, and to paint it, and to put a lot of protective coatings on it so that the tower can maintain, can help maintain itself, and it minimizes the amount of refurbishment that they have to do to the entire facility between launches and overall, as it sits right next to the ocean in extremely corrosive saltwater air. Aaron wants to know, how is Launchpad 39A being fixed for Starship? They are actually building inside the perimeter of the pad's gates a Starship launch mount and landing pad. This is not on the main ramp or apron that Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavies launch from. It's actually off to the side in an area that used to be grass inside the pad perimeter. So that's how they're modifying 39A for Starship. How much heavier will Starship be versus Falcon 9, and how much more will it be able to launch? Okay, I don't know off the top of my head how much heavier it is, but let's put it this way. The Falcon 9 you're going to see launch today produces 1.7 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. Starship will produce 16 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. Quite a difference. Its lift capability is significantly more than the Falcon 9. Its power, its mass is extremely more than the Falcon 9. But yeah, maybe that's the best way to put it right now. Off the top of my head, it's 1.7 million pounds of thrust for a liftoff of a Falcon 9, 16 million pounds of thrust at liftoff for Starship. So a lot more, a lot more. Code School wants to know, does Starship have a second stage? Yes, Starship's second stage is Starship. The first stage is the Super Heavy booster, and then Starship itself is the second stage. So the entirety of the Starship system is reusable, unlike the Falcon 9s and the Falcon Heavies, where the second stage is the only thing that is not reusable on the rocket itself. Carl wants to know, what direction will the Falcon 9 head off in? For today, Falcon 9 will head northeast up the coast of the United States, away from the Kennedy Space Center, into a 53-degree inclination orbit for Starlink. The booster will land about 200 kilometers off the coast of Charleston, South Carolina, and the payload fairings will be caught or splashed down in the ocean about 300 kilometers off the coast of North Carolina. What is the cost of recovering a fairing compared to a brand new one? We're talking maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars between the upkeep of the ship and personnel salaries and food and supplies and all the general upkeep that need to be done to those boats, in comparison to saving $6 million for an entire payload fairing that you can then reuse. So it's well worth the cost of recovery for that. James Jennison wants to know, how many launches have I been to? Oh my goodness, I have no idea. I started attending launches when I was like an infant with my dad. A lot of launches that I don't remember. The first launch that I have a memory of is STS-49, the maiden voyage of Space Shuttle Endeavour. I believe the first one I saw as a child was the STS-26 return to flight of the shuttle program. I used to have a picture that I sadly lost in one of my moves,
Stage 1 feels close out.
where my dad, I was 10 months old, and my dad was holding me in his arms as Discovery launched on the return to flight mission of the shuttle program. So I've seen hundreds of launches. And we did just hear over the net that Stage 1 closeouts are in work, so we are in the business end of our countdown now. Also, the engines are in chill down, so they have opened the valves, and super cold liquid oxygen is now trickling into the engines on the base of the Falcon 9 to thermally condition them ahead of liftoff. We need to thermally condition those engines down to cryogenic temperatures slowly, so they are not shocked by a sudden flow of super cold propellants at ignition and liftoff. Mackie wants to know, any updates on Crew Dragon's DM2 launch?
Vehicles in tough line.
Nope, no more updates. Still targeting no earlier than May 7th at this point. What impact the coronavirus lockdowns and quarantines might have on that are unknown. We do know that the crew is continuing to train for the mission presently at the Johnson Space Center, but that was before all NASA centers went to mission critical personnel only. So we think that means the Demo 2 crew is continuing to train, but we don't have confirmation of that at this point. Papa Dukes wants to know.
And tanks pressing for strong back retract.
All right, and Falcon 9's fuel tanks are pressurizing now for strong back retract. How large will the Starlink network be? So the Starlink network will be roughly 12,000 satellites to 40,000 satellites. They haven't really determined exactly how many they'll need yet based on demand, but the FCC permits that they have been granted by the Federal Communications Commission here in the United States permit up to 40,000 Starlinks. And the focus area is global. This is a global communications network. So the northern latitudes first, just because that's where most of them will be, that's where the orbits overlap the most. So the northern latitudes will have coverage first, working your way down to the equator for full coverage. But all right, T-minus 4 minutes and counting. We are just about ready for the strong back to retract to its 88.5 degree pre-launch pullback position. It will throw back to 45 degrees at the moment the Falcon 9 lifts off from the pad and the clamps are released. So this particular mission is launching the next batch of 60 Starlink satellites, so it is going into low Earth orbit. It's not going to the International Space Station, it's not rendezvousing with anything. It's just another round of Starlink missions being added to the constellation. A great question here. How do you determine that the path is all clear and that no airplanes or other satellites are in the way? So in terms of airplanes, the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration closes the airspace along the ground track of Falcon 9 for a particular radius until it gets up to a certain altitude, at which point basically they believe that they could divert planes away if there is a launch failure after a certain point. That airspace closure is monitored by the Air Force and enforced by the Air Force here around Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center. In terms of satellites, U.S. Space Command monitors all satellites in orbit and communicates with SpaceX about any satellites that they could fly too close to or potentially collide with during a launch and deployment sequence. So that's how we ensure that both air and space are clear and ready for a particular launch. Amboy, real quick, in the final 2 minutes before liftoff, what happened on Sunday was that as all 9 Merlin engines came up, one engine had a power issue that was detected by one of the sensors on board, and the system worked perfectly to abort the launch sequence once that sensor reading was noted by the system to stop the countdown, shut down all 9 Merlin engines, and begin safing the vehicle. So there is our 2-minute vent. Everything going well. Here we go, getting ready for the launch of the 6th Starlink flight here from the Kennedy Space Center. This will be the first launch of Starlink satellites from Pad 39A. All previous 5 Starlink missions went from Pad 40 at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, which is just 3 pads to the south. Gorgeous views there of the Falcon 9 on the pad. I'm going to go ahead and get everything configured on my end now so that I am good to track the Falcon 9 as it lifts off. We are 1 minute away now from liftoff.
Vehicle's in startup.
Vehicle is in startup.
LDs go for launch.
Launch director is go for launch. Here we go, the final few seconds.
T-minus 15 seconds.
15 seconds.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
Engine ignition.
5, 4,
and liftoff
3,
of the 6th
2,
Starlink mission.
1, 0. Ignition.
Go, baby,
Lift
go.
off.
Falcon 9's pitching downrange.
Stage 1, propulsion nominal.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Power and telemetry are nominal. There we go through. There we go, transonic. Look at that. Woo!
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
All right, Falcon 9 has gone supersonic. A successful beginning to the Starlink mission here
Maximum
from
aerodynamic
39A
pressure.
at the Kennedy Space Center. There we go, autofocus, thank you. Alright, Falcon 9 really gaining a lot more horizontal acceleration instead of vertical now, exactly what we need for orbit. Falcon 9 has also set off several car alarms here in the parking lot of the press site and the vehicle assembly building. Totally normal. Alright, standing by for first stage shutdown and separation. Yeah, look at that plume expansion there that you can see on the SpaceX stream. That is absolutely gorgeous. Let's go ahead and cut over to just the SpaceX stream. I think, Das, that the camera's having a little trouble focusing with the lighting angles here. But yeah, look at that. Gorgeous liftoff. So far, standing by for confirmation of stage separation.
MECO 1.
Stage separation confirmed.
And we have stage separation confirmed. Look at that.
Yes, SpaceX stream is on, showing separation.
And the second stage has ignited. You can still hear from here at the Kennedy Space Center. You can still hear the sound of the Falcon 9 and its first stage engine.
Fairing separation
Back on the
confirmed.
right
From the upper levels of the atmosphere. All right, payload fairing separation confirmed as well. So that is the booster on its way to the drone ship. Of course, I Still Love You for touchdown and recovery. And the payload fairings are now on their way to the fairing catcher ships Go Mystery and Go Mischief. And that's the call we'd like to hear, that stage 2 propulsion is nominal. So far, so
Stage 2 is
good
on a
for
nominal
Falcon 9.
trajectory.
So absolutely
Acquisition of
gorgeous.
signal
Again, if you
Bermuda.
joined us, an acquisition of signal Bermuda, which is exactly what they want. Again, if you joined us just before liftoff, you are watching the launch of the Falcon 9 rocket with 60 additional Starlink satellites for their space-based internet constellation. This mission will follow the same general pattern that the previous one did, with the Starlink separating from the top of the second stage about 14 minutes after liftoff. The booster will attempt to land on, of course, I Still Love You, and the payload fairings will attempt to be caught by Go Mischief and Go Mystery. Second stage doing its job on a nominal trajectory to get the satellites into their initial elliptical orbit for deployment. After that, SpaceX controllers will take over the control of the 60 Starlinks and begin activating them, checking them out, and in small groups raising their orbits. If we can go back to a split screen here, Das and Michael, I've got pad 39A back in frame, so people can see just how much that transporter erector throws back to a 45-degree angle, having done its job to fuel and launch the Falcon 9. And launched the Falcon 9 this morning. We actually, the last of the sound waves from the Falcon 9 actually just stopped here. It's amazing how powerful these vehicles are, and how long you can hear them, and the rumble that reaches you from the upper levels of the atmosphere, 70 kilometers up and over 100 kilometers downrange at boosters, shutdown, and separation. So again, you're continuing to watch the Falcon 9 second stage on its way to orbit with 60 Starlink satellites. We are now coming up shortly on the entry burn of the first stage as it slows itself down, as it re-enters the atmosphere, headed for the Of Course I Still Love You drone ship, which is positioned about 200 kilometers off the coast of Charleston, South Carolina, 630 kilometers northeast of the Kennedy Space Center. And on that split screen, you can see the transporter erector venting some gaseous oxygen from it as it goes through its post-launch purge and safing operations out there prior to the SpaceX teams going back to the pad to begin pad turnaround work at 39A.
Stage 1
entry
FTS
burn
is
startup.
safe.
All right, and here comes the entry burn.
Stage 2
at
continues to
night,
follow downward
and with-
trajectory.
So at night and on clear skies here at the Cape, we can actually see the entry burn of the Starlink booster over 600 kilometers away from us. It's incredible the distances you can see here at night over the ocean. How
Stage
high
1,
it
entry
is.
burn
But
shut
here
down.
comes all right, and the entry burn is complete. The Falcon 9 on its way to the drone ship. Next up is the landing burn and landing leg deployment. As exciting as these landings always are, keep your eye on that second stage. The second stage is the star of the show right now, continuing to take the mission's payload into orbit. So as cool as these landings are, main event is still getting that payload into orbit with the second stage. Okay, so not necessarily not uncommon to lose the feed like that from the booster as it comes into the drone ship, but the second stage continuing to fire its single Merlin vacuum engine, taking those 60 Starlink satellites up into orbit. So we are standing by now for either a call out over. Okay, Falcon terminal guidance has been initiated, so the second stage is in its final guidance software program to perform a pinpoint orbit insertion of those 60 Starlink
Stage
satellites
2
into
FTS
their
is safe.
initial orbit. All right, and the automated flight termination system on stage 2 is safe. We no longer need it, so it shuts down. Standing by for landing burn startup confirmation on the first stage. Yeah, and still no video, but we should get callouts over the net as these things happen.
We have Seco 1.
Regardless, what we need to... I missed that call out of whatever it was. Oh, Seco, so Seco, so that should be orbit insertion for the second stage. Okay, well, we are way past landing burn and the anticipated landing. We had no call out for that from the launch team.
Expected loss of signal
What did they just
Cape.
say, Doc?
Expected acquisition of signal Newfoundland.
So they lost. The expected
Orbital
loss of
insertion is
signal at
not
the
over.
second stage from Cape Canaveral. Yeah, coming up now on Starlink deployment, it based on the lack of callouts, it does not look like the booster landed. We'll wait for that official confirmation, but based on no call out of landing burn startup or landing leg deployment or landing of the Falcon 9 on the drone ship, they either lost signal with the booster completely and it did its job and is on the drone ship and we don't know it yet, or something went wrong after the entry burn stopped. An entry burn shutdown that all appeared to be called out right on time. So we'll wait now for Starlink separation here coming up in just a few moments. But again, we had no call out of a landing burn or a successful landing of the booster on the drone ship. What is important to note, we'll wait and see what happened with that landing, but the Falcon 9 did its job. That first stage flying for the first time SpaceX has reflown a booster, or flown a booster 5 times. It did its job. It worked. It did everything it was supposed to in getting the second stage where it needed to be before shutting down and separating and sending the second stage and the Starlinks on its way. These landings are always nice bonuses. It is part of SpaceX's overall plan and launch cadence plan, but it is important to note that it wouldn't be a mark against the mission or a mission failure if the booster failed to land. But again, we will wait and we will see what they have to say about that, and we should be just be a couple minutes away from deployment of the Starlink satellites now. So we will stand by and we will wait. All right, about 3 minutes away from that separation of the Starlink. So we will wait to see what is happening there.
Starting deploy spin up.
Okay, starting deploy spin up. So this is the slight tumble that is induced into the Falcon 9 second stage. So that when the Starlinks are commanded to release, they sort of fan out like a deck of cards.
Expected loss of signal, Bermuda.
So they had the expected loss of signal Bermuda. Whenever they say expected loss of signal, that means it's just passed too far away from that ground station for that they've lost the line of sight of communication with it, and that's as expected per the pre-flight data and timelines. So expected loss of signal is good. But again, if you were just joining us, we did have a successful launch of the Starlink satellites. We are awaiting their deployment. We did not have any callouts for landing burn startup, landing burn completion, landing leg deployment, or landing of the Falcon 9 on the drone ship. In fact, SpaceX lost the signal from the booster shortly after the entry burn shutdown was complete. So we will wait to see what SpaceX has to say about that. But the main part of the mission, the thing we care about, is the boosters, is the Starlink deployment, which is coming up here shortly. In about less than a minute to go now. All right, there are the Starlink satellites. Booster landing failure confirmed. So the booster did not land on the drone ship. So that is a fond farewell for booster 1048, the first booster to fly 5 times. It did its job perfectly during the launch sequence, but it did not land on the drone ship. So we will await a word from SpaceX on exactly what happened there. Again, on the live stream, they did lose signal with the booster shortly after entry burn shutdown happened. So standing by here for the Starlink separation and deployment. Should be coming up here any second now.
Payload separation confirmed.
Payload fairing separation confirmed. All right, all 60 Starlinks are in orbit. That is mission success for SpaceX and for the Falcon 9. Again, so to recap, we had an on-time liftoff from 39A here, the first Starlink mission to go from 39A. The first time a booster was flown for a 5th time, but we do say a fond farewell to booster 1048. It did suffer a landing failure and did not land on the drone ship. Today, they lost signal with it, at least on the public side, shortly after the entry burn shut down. That's not a mark against mission success, though SpaceX will definitely take a look at what happened after that, but it is a success for the booster and its 5th reflight, because the booster's job is to boost the second stage up out of the atmosphere, impart enough velocity and delta V onto it so that the second stage can ignite and take the payload onto orbit, and that's exactly what happened here. This morning, these landings are no longer classed as experimental by SpaceX, but they are not part of the overall mission success classification. So, fond farewell to booster 1048, fifth flight of a booster. We will wait. It'll take approximately 45 minutes after liftoff, so another 30 minutes from now, before we'd have word at the earliest if the payload fairings were caught by Go Mystery and Go Mischief, or if they splash down into the Atlantic where they could be recovered for potential reuse on a future mission. But with 60 brand new Starlink satellites successfully in orbit, that brings the total number of Starlinks launched to 362, with 361 in orbit, as one has been deorbited at this point. We thank you all for watching this morning. It is our pleasure and our privilege to bring all of this to you. I'm just going to read a few tweets from SpaceX here. Yeah, I will, DOS. So SpaceX confirms the successful deployment of the Starlink satellites on their Twitter feed. And again, we should watch that Twitter feed for any updates from SpaceX for any updates that they'll give us on what caused the landing of the Falcon 9 to not go as planned today on the drone ship. But thank you guys so much for joining us here today. Like I said, it's always a pleasure and a privilege to bring all of these to you and these launches, and we will continue to do so as long as it is safe for us to come into the Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral Air Force Station during this global pandemic. But we do thank you so much for watching. Thanks to everyone who supported us today with super chats. If you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We promise we don't spam you with anything other than really cool rocket launch videos like this and other things that we are able to attend. We are also working on some things to bring you that are not launch related as the world sort of hunkers down in isolation and quarantine for this coronavirus outbreak. We're not quite ready yet to tell you what those are, but we are working on some things that we'll be bringing you through our YouTube channel to hopefully keep you informed and up to date on what's going on, and also just some cool things that we're working on behind the scenes. But we should be able to talk a little bit about that next week with you all. So please continue to support us. We love all of you, but please, above everything, stay safe. Head on over to NASASpaceflight and read our launch article for this mission and read about the Starlink satellite and constellation network. As long as rockets keep launching around the world in the next few months, we'll keep finding ways to bring them to you that are safe and easy to do. So stay safe out there, everyone. Have a great day or night wherever you are around the world. I'm Chris Gebhardt, live from the Kennedy Space Center. Thanks, guys. Thanks, DOS. Will do.
There we go. How's that? Is that better? Yeah. That's super annoying. That's super annoying the way that that works. Yeah, I can hear it now. All right, we switched back over, and when I switched back over, I had to mute this stream and unmute the other stream and et cetera, but we're good. I keep doing that because it doesn't let me listen to it in advance before I switch over, but we'll eventually get in the swing of that. I'm back here in the studio. Let me go ahead and log out of that real quick. And I got a replay right quick. I was going to do a replay. I'm back, like I said, back at the studio here with the audio issues. Successful launch of the 6th Starlink mission. Let's pop back over this way like this. And this is just from T-minus 22. Should have audio and all that sort of stuff. This is a replay. Again, this has already happened. This is a replay. And here is our 10 seconds
10, 9,
with a countdown.
8.
It's going to match
7,
the video
6,
this time.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
A little bit of shake.
0.
You get the flash.
Ignition.
You get the cloud. Wow. Dude. Is that what it sounded like on the official live stream? Oh my gosh. I don't know where they got that microphone from, but that was a little bit crazy. I was listening to Chris's mic during the actual stream because we were using our camera, and I wasn't ready for that sound on this stream here. But this is the replay of the actual SpaceX stream. You can see T plus 32 seconds there. Nominal flight. Watch this. One of my favorite parts of flight is when it goes supersonic. Watch around the top of the thing. Oops, it's drifting. But watch around the top and you'll get the cone effect whenever it breaks the sound barrier. Watch this. Right around max Q. I hope I didn't miss it. Yep, okay, max Q is still... There it is. So you see the cone effect that goes around the top of the rocket there? Whenever it goes through max Q, you can see that sort of vapor cone go behind the back of the fairing. That's always something cool to watch for on the launch. Let's go ahead and mute you. The first stage keeps on going here. Again, this was a Starlink mission carrying broadband internet satellites up. SpaceX Starlink is their broadband internet constellation. Chris G is out there packing up the camera and stuff like that. He's going to get on back home and we'll do some replays and stuff. I mean, it was loud. It was crazy sounding. It was loud. As the rocket gets higher, another cool thing that I like in the launches is you can see the plumes start to expand here. You know, like when you have like a flame, it's normally like a little, like an arrow, like a little point. On the rockets, the higher they get, the less atmospheric pressure there is. And it's the atmospheric pressure that sort of shapes that flame into a little pencil point, right? When you get up into the upper atmosphere, there's not a lot of atmospheric pressure, and that plume actually is allowed to expand out. There's no air pressure pushing it into the little pencil shape. And so you get this big star pattern that's really obvious on the Falcon 9 because it's got, 9 engines, not Falcon 9. That's why it's called a Falcon 9. It's not like the 9th version that worked or anything. And you can see it's really obvious here in the official stream. You get this big expansion just because there's no atmospheric pressure up there. There's no air pressure to push that flame back in. So that's why you get mock diamonds. If you ever see the exhaust mock diamonds where the exhaust actually goes out and bounces back onto itself. This is a shot from the inside of the second stage looking down at the booster. You have that big stiffening rod in there, and it's basically a big strut. Any Kerbal Space Program players in the house, there's a couple of struts, and then there's the separation. You can see the second stage looking down, and this side is actually the top stage, or the bottom stage looking up. And there you see the MVAC, and it messes with the camera a little bit there. It lights, and this side it lights. I don't know what was going on with their exposure here today. This camera was a little blown out. And it seemed to be switching. They usually have a camera on either side. So this, I think, is the camera on the other side where it switches to the other side. So you've got the Merlin vacuum engine on this side lighting up, and then on the other side you got the grid fins. And this is where the booster is actually starting its ballistic trajectory back down towards the drone ship. And the second stage is continuing on. That was fairing separation. So the payload fairing, the PLF up on the top of the rocket, splitting in two and exposing those Starlink satellites. Again, you get that high up in the atmosphere, and there's not a lot of atmospheric pressure, so there's not a lot of drag, right? There's not a lot of air that's going to slow down your rocket, so you don't need that aerodynamic protection from the aero. It's not an aeroshell, it's a payload fairing in that case. But all these little things are normal. When you see these little puffs, do you see how sometimes it crinkles? Those are the thrusters firing. There's little reaction thrusters on there. And every now and then one of those thrusters will fire. And again, because there's not a lot of air pressure keeping the exhaust from that thruster in little pencil mode, you can see it sort of onto the sides. There was a little bit of insulation or ice or something that came off. You can actually see it sort of riding the engine there. And then on the other side, you got the grid fins. The grid fins are deployed, and they're helping stabilize that first stage on its ballistic trajectory back down to the drone ship. But again, there's a switching between the cameras, right? The switching between the cameras. What's that guy's name? Or you mean me? Like, what's my name? I'm Das. How's it going? What's up? I'm just talking on the stream, doing a recap. You know how it is. Not reading a lot of chat because I'm just explaining the various phases of the launch here as we do the replay. You know. See what, Bobby? What do you mean, see what? Yeah, they did say the first stage didn't make it, so we're getting ready to come up on that. I'm going to go ahead and we'll watch it all the way through. Again, second stage continuing nominally, and you can see right here down on the bottom, you see how we've got entry burn coming up, and then we have landing burn. SpaceX does this nice little timeline because they're sort of in charge of the launch. It's their rocket and all. And so they have this nice little on-screen graphic. And we're going to have the entry burn coming up where the first stage is actually using the supersonic retro propulsion. The engine exhaust actually acts as a heat shield. And the heat shield helps that booster sort of stay intact through its re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. It's not going anywhere really near orbital speed, but it still is encountering an awful lot of compression heating. A lot of people think it's friction, right? You're coming back into the atmosphere and it's friction heating. Oh, the air is rubbing on the sides of the rocket and that's what's heating it up. And it's not actually what happens. It's more like a can of compressed air. You blow your keyboard out with a little thing and you're like, shh, and it blows your keyboard out. You know what I'm talking about? And if you just go ham on one of those, you just, and you like blow, you leave it going for a while, it gets cold, right? Something ideal gas law. When you decompress or depress the gas, I guess, it actually gets colder. Opposite to that, when you compress the gas or when you compress the substance, it tends to heat up. The opposite of a can depressurizing. So as the booster's crashing into the atmosphere, it's actually compressing that. It's shoving the atmosphere out of the way is what it's doing. And it's the compression of that atmosphere that actually heats up the rocket. It's not so much friction. Ah, yes, the ideal gas law. Ah, yes. What is that? UFO? Wait a second. Wait a second. 635. Hang on. I'll look. Wait, there's something on the screen that isn't explainable. It's a piece of ice or something it was going by. Look, that's a piece of that was actually big, but that wasn't a UFO. I see what you're talking about. Look, let's roll it back 10 seconds and see if I can get it here. Look at that right there. I'll pause it. Let's see. So that's coming up on the entry burn, and that actually looked like it came... Again, that looked like it came from the bottom of the rocket. It looks like something that was separated out, and it's sort of following the airflow around the side of the rocket as it spreads out a little bit. I see what you're talking about. I mean, it's right there on the screen. We're not going to pretend it's not there. But look, watch really closely. Right in this area. That does look like it came off the bottom of the rocket. So technically it's a UFO because I can't identify what it is. It's an unidentified flying object, right? No. That actually does look... I mean, we can do it in slow motion. Let's watch it in slow-mo real quick. What is this 480? What? No. That's ridiculous. Let's see if we can watch it in slow motion and see if it comes off the bottom here. There was a little piece that seemed to come off a grid fin or something like that. Right there. That definitely looked like it peeled off the bottom of the rocket, didn't it? Huh. Again, I am not a reporter. I am just watching a video. I don't have any official announcement from SpaceX as to what that is. We can certainly look at it, but that's not a little Kerbal flying by in a spaceship. That's not Jeb or Val or something. That is something that really does look like it comes off the bottom. But again, I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to be like, oh my God, the engine lost a piece. Dude, did you see that? No, it really does look just from this. that is a... See, it almost looks like it sort of peels off past the engine there. Got pretty close to the grid fins. Didn't impact the grid fins, but that was clear. I mean, that was obvious. Good eyes, y'all. Good eyes. So let's continue on with this. I'll answer some questions after we get done, but let's just keep on keeping on with the launch, because we're going to come up, we're going to get the entry burn done. There's the entry burn. So you see an ignition. Don't really see anything particularly asymmetrical. You can see the way, you see the flame is off to one side. That's because the rocket's not flying directly tail first. It's got a little bit of an attitude, I guess, or an angle of attack against the way that it's flying against the air. But there, the entry burn is complete. And this is where we saw this. We saw this during the live stream. But when the engine shut down, the rocket picked up a little bit of a wobble, but it looks like it was stabilized by the grid fins there. You did see that there was a little bit of a wobble there, but it looks like the grid fins got a hold of that pretty dang quickly. Let's watch it one more time. Because you do, look at this. It's stable, the engine shut down, and then the grid fins actually start to turn a little bit. And it almost looks like the grid fins caused that. Let's go watch one more time. I mean, I'm okay watching one more time. Let's have a look. So you're starting to get effects on the camera. Get a little bit of a sundog or something there almost. And we'll watch the entry burn shut down one more time. And there was a little couple of pieces, but it's most likely ice. DY89 is saying it's ice. Nothing else can come out the bottom. It is probably, again, I don't know. I don't have an official announcement from SpaceX. We're sort of watching a video and talking about it. You know you're going to talk about it anyways, so I might as well talk about it on the stream, right? But you really do see this. You get engine shut down, and then you see those grid fins sort of activate. And are the grid fins causing the roll? Are the grid fins correcting for the roll? I don't know. I'm not going to guess at it. You do see the grid fins moving, and you see the rocket sort of turn a little bit. And then we get a stage 1 downlink loss there. But it wasn't like there was a flame trail or something that happened. If not, it looks like it lost an engine during ascent. Really? Wait a second. Seemed to be a flash up from the engines about 220. Let's go have a look at that. Let's go have a look at that right quick. NASASpaceflight, thank you for saying that in public chat. I need to know if something's in Discord that I can say it out loud on the stream. I didn't see that, but sometimes I need to know that. Let's go have a look at that real quick. 220 is where we wanted to go. So let's go on down to 2 minutes and have a look. There's 2. Okay. So let's watch here. Let's watch. It's a little off-center, but sometimes the plume expansion is a little off-center. Right? I mean, it sort of looks like there's a little bit of a gap here, but as the rocket sort of changes its trajectory, that happens sometimes. Let's keep watching it. There's 206. We're watching for 220 here, where people are saying there may be something to look at. Whoa! There was something that hey, you're right. Look at that. And again, I'm not speculating. That is not my place to speculate. But watch when these engines, like right before they shut down. Y'all see that? It's like a backfire. It's like engine run a little bit too rich. Muffler blew out the back. Right there at 220. Again, y'all, this is not official information. This is us as a community of people who love rockets watching a video. This isn't me saying that, oh, something happened. This isn't NASA spaceflight saying, oh. But I mean, there's definitely some sort of little bump that happens there, isn't there? Right there. I tried to pause it. I didn't pause it in time. That white flash. Look at that. That is, I don't know that that's something we've seen before. That's definitely something. Did it have something to do with the landing? Did it not have something? That's not my place to say, right? When we're in this position, I am very much wait for official confirmation from SpaceX. We all want to play, what, Monday morning rocket scientist or whatever. Actually, I guess it's Wednesday afternoon rocket scientist or whatever. But we do want to make sure we get official information, but that slightly looks not quite nominal, right? You can see. I mean, that's not the nice, clean... Look at that flash. I mean, you could just step through it. Yeah, there isn't oxygen in space, Jason T. Stevens. That's why half the rocket has to carry its own oxygen with it, so that the rocket can continue its combustion. Literally, the LOX, when you hear people say LOX, that's liquid oxygen, because rockets have to carry their own. But look at that. You're right. There is definitely some sort of little bump there. Again, I don't know what that is. We will certainly stand by on social media and stuff like that to see if there's any information. That might be a good time to sort of read some stuff. Let's see here. Are there any official tweets or anything like that? Back in the studio, people that are helping out, if there are any official tweets from SpaceX on that, let me know. So let's see. Check 16.5. Now there's all sorts of people. Oh, check this, check that, check this. If you want me to check a time, tell me why. Tell me why. This says check 1615. It's T plus 1615. I mean, I'm happy to look around, but I would like to know what the deal is. I think I'm already up to, like, basically 1615 is almost the very end here. Right? So 1615, those are the Starlink satellites that are sort of fanning out like a deck of cards. Is that... That's like a camera artifact or something it looks like. Is that what you're looking for? That line in the sky? That looks like a camera artifact or something to me. I mean, it's not sure what that is. T-minus 5 seconds. No water deluge. Let's go look at T-minus 5 seconds. Y'all can speculate as to what that is, but let's go over here and see. Because normally you'll see these rainbirds go right here, right? Normally you'll see these rainbirds start to blow, and let's watch. I mean, I am okay. Chris, if you don't want me to go back and look at stuff like this, again, we want official information from SpaceX. We want confirmation from SpaceX. Gwynn Shotwell, Elon Musk, we want official confirmation on things that happen. Normally I'm not sure that, I don't know, Chris B, you let me know if this is okay for us to do. You can see the water coming out of them already. Yeah, there's the water coming out. So if you were looking at the water deluge, you can sort of see that water deluge curtain start right in there. You see that? So yeah, there was definitely some delusion there. So it's all cool. All right, thanks, Crispy. Yeah. Yes, but that is, I mean, over there at T plus 6, that is definitely something, because that flash. Where is our flash at? 620 it was, wasn't it? Y'all, it's a massive pet peeve of mine on people that are like speculating and say, oh my gosh, Starliner crashed. Gosh, look at Kerbal Space Program here. Starliner didn't make it because Kerbal, like, don't do stuff like that. It's super important to me that we have good information, you know? So that 620 was where the little bump came over. It was 220 where it bumped, and 620 was the other thing, wasn't it? That was the flash we were looking for, but I don't have any official information on what that right there actually was. Not nominal, not something that we normally see in those launches. And then the little piece, something came by. It was probably just a piece of ice. The thing with the resolutions, we're not exactly getting a 1080 feed from SpaceX off these rockets because, you know, it's a rocket giving us a live feed from the edge of space at that point. It's okay that we're not getting like as many pixels as you may confer from somebody standing in a studio, right? But you see, we don't have a lot of high resolution on exactly what that little piece that comes by. Scroll through. Oh, you could watch this all day. Appreciate you, JD Kelly. Yeah, I'm not too great looking. I'm okay with that. You can observe that scientific fact. I'm just reading through some chat real quick, seeing what's going on. Hey, Klaus, how's it going? Greetings from Charlotte, North Carolina, USA, where we are sheltering in place here. Let's see. I'm just scrolling through. People say should be full power when the engines start. Oh, I mean, hey, if somebody in the back channel gets me a link, I can pull up CRS-20. We could certainly look at CRS-20 and check the differences if that's something y'all want to do. I mean, we don't have to do that. But the other thing is we missed that, we lost that link when it did after the entry burn. All these little things, people always like to scream about. You see these little things? Look, let's John Madden it a bit. You see these little bits and bobs that are sort of going past the rocket? Watch. Watch right in here. There's a piece of, see that? See that? Look, it sort of goes up there, then it falls off the back. It's a piece of ice or something. That's not like a mouse that's along for the ride or anything. That's just a piece of ice or something coming off the back. And then these, people always like to scream about these puffs. Oh, there's no air in space. These are the thrusters. The Falcon 9 has these thrusters on the back of it, and those are sort of little puffs that are coming off the back. You can actually see the gases from it sometimes. So, anyways, a sunny wind. We did get confirmation that there was no landing. The booster was lost. The booster did not land successfully is the information that I have on that. So that is what I've heard so far. Let's do this. Let's pop out of full screen. What button do you hit for that? There it is. And we can grab CRS-20. Thank you. Dude, Chris, thank you for the timestamp. Look at this. It's like concierge here. Let's bring this up real quick. So this is T-10 from CRS-20. Bit of a different angle there, but you do get a lot of spray there, and the spray is coming straight out the side before the engines went. Look at that. It is a different camera than we had. These are these 4 sort of rainbirds all around, and they have a good, almost straight horizontal spray at liftoff. You can sort of see that, right? You all see that? Nothing. Rainbirds. You see the rainbirds coming out there? And that's at T-0. Those things are, I mean, it's not like a dribbling rainbird. The rainbird sort of looks like this. It's a pipe, and it's got a deflector thing on top, and you put a bunch of water up through the pipe like this, and it hits the deflector, and it comes out this way, right? So when you have some water pressure, or when you don't have much water pressure, this pipe is sort of filling up with water, and it'll start to sort of trickle out the top like this. And the more pressure you put into this pipe, the sort of more it goes out. And when you get a lot of pressure into this pipe, it sort of comes out straight horizontally, right? That's how the rainbird works there. It's just a spray nozzle. It's a pipe with a little thing on top, like a sprinkler in your yard, right? Not rocket science. Rocket launch pad engineering. Not rocket science, but it's rocket launch pad engineering. And let's pop back over this way and have a look at the launch. So here's some rainbirds again. Right here, you can see these rainbirds. And it's a different camera angle, so we're not comparing exactly apples to apples. But let's see how these sort of work. You gonna let me play? YouTube? Anyone? There we go. So 4, 3, there's only a trickle coming out at that point. Look at this. The rainbirds on this side are only trickling as well. Y'all see that? That is a good catch. You see the rainbirds right there at T-7, 6, 5. I'm going to pause it right there. No, what is YouTube doing? I'm not sure what YouTube thinks it's doing there. The rainbirds at T-3 are just trickling here, right? You can see they're very sad, very low flow rainbirds sort of doing this number. Right? There's not this horizontal flow that's going straight at the base of the rocket. Now, again, I don't know if there's something about a CRS mission with an RTLS that makes it different than this mission, but it's just something that we're observing, right? I'm not saying that this is an actual problem. Maybe this is something that happens, and CRS just acts differently, right? But compare that sort of little trickly rainbird, with CRS-20, and this is T-5, and look at the flow from the rainbirds here. There's enough pressure that almost puts it straight out the sides. See that? Look at that flow at T-4, T-3, T-2. And we definitely don't see that same flow from the deluge system as we're seeing on the launch today. T-3, T-2. Look at this. They're just trickling. You know, this is still in slow motion. Is that the problem? No, it's playback speed normal. Rainbow difference is due to different pads. That's normal for 39A. Flows much higher than it looks is what I'm hearing in the background. The back channel over there. Okay. All right. So people in the background are saying that the rainbow difference is due to the different pads. That was normal for 39A to work that way. And the last launch was from a different pad. That's the different configurations, the Rainbirds. Michael Baylor, Next Spaceflight, is getting some information here in the background. Here's another one, the launch escape demonstration. Let's have a look at this one and see if this one's different, right? With today's launch still on? Today's launch already happened. So let's look at one more launch, right? When you're doing scientific inquiry, you have all sorts of different things. This is the same angle. This is the same pad, the same angle, and look at this. This is from Crew Dragon launch escape demonstration. So look at the angle on the Rainbirds here. That's just pad 39A. See the Rainbirds? Not full flow, sort of down at an angle a little bit, and then they go to full burst at T+3, T+4. That's exactly what we saw here today. Full burst at T+2, 2+3. You see that? And that matches exactly what we see at the Crew Dragon launch demonstration right here. That is a great video. Thank you for that video link there, Michael. Look, bam, T-2, T+2, T+3. That's when you get that full pressure throw. So that was nominal. Nothing to see there because that matches exactly what we observed back in January for the Crew Dragon launch demonstration. Great video. Great video. And when we see CRS-20 is happening from a different pad, right? Look at the pad. Anybody see the crew access tower? Anybody see the crew arm? This is not 39A. CRS-20 went from a different pad. CRS-40 went from pad 40, and pad 40 has a different configuration, and so the Rainbirds are acting a little bit differently there than they are on 39A. So great eyes there, noticing that there was a little bit of a difference in what you may have seen in the past, but that is explained due to differences in pads. I like it. I like it. Also, ice coming off the engines and stuff like that is pretty normal. So, Next Spaceflight, thank you for the information there. Yeah, I got it. Chris B. Those 3 videos, that's actually pretty good. So apparently, I'm getting in the back channel here as well. An engine failed in flight also during CRS-1. So it's the second time that they may have lost an engine during flight, according to Next Spaceflight on the backside here. So we'll see. It'll be interesting. Certainly, SpaceX is going to understand what went wrong. This is the first time that they flew a booster for the 5th time. Sort of weird to say, but it's the first time that they've tried a 5th flight, a 4th reflight, because the first flight isn't a reflight, right? And SpaceX is certainly going to be on that like a rat on a Cheeto. They have sensors and data and all sorts of stuff to see exactly what went on. And if there was some sort of anomaly with an engine, we observed that flash there that we didn't think was quite nominal given the other launches. SpaceX knows about it. SpaceX has data on it, and they'll use it to make things better for the next time. That's sort of their deal, isn't it? Elon tweet. Oh, so wait, do we have a tweet? It looks like we just have a tweet. Yeah, we do have a tweet about it. Elon just said, let me see if I can grab this tweet real quick. Thank you. That just came up over here. Let me grab this tweet from Elon real quick and see what Elon said. So there was also an early engine shutdown on ascent, but it didn't affect orbital insertion. Shows value of having 9 engines. Thorough investigation needed before the next mission. So there was an early engine shutdown confirmed by Elon himself here during ascent. Was that the video of the early engine shutdown? I mean, Elon doesn't say that, but we do see something that looks like a bit of an anomaly right before the end of the burn there. But Elon confirming that there was an issue with an engine during ascent. Which engine was it? I don't know. Is it one of the engines that would be used for the reentry burn or the landing burn? I don't know. I don't want to guess about that. But Elon himself, like I feel comfortable saying this because Elon's, I mean, I was reading what Elon said, right? So anyways, Alice, you're welcome. You're welcome. That's sort of what we do. I mean, Chris is packing up the camera and he's all done. Does Chris know that he can turn off his... No, okay, he's clear. I can make sure that he's turned off his camera and his solo and everything. But this is the type of stuff that I like to look for. I don't want to give people bad information. We're all super fans, right? We all love what's going on. We all want to watch it, and people scroll back the tape and they want to do it in slow motion and say like, oh my gosh, what was that? Was that a stiffener? Was that a chunk of ice? Like, oh, was that a fuel leak? Like all these things that people like to think that they see. But since we're NASA Spaceflight, I specifically personally want to make sure people understand the difference between us sort of looking at something and saying, wow, that looked a little bit weird, and making an official announcement, there was an engine failure. Like, well, once Elon says it, then we can say Elon said that an engine shut down. But for me personally, I don't like to be here trying to guesstimate and armchair rocket scientist SpaceX when they do this sort of stuff, you know? So we always try to look for official confirmation before I see. Any news on the fairing? Back at the studio. I'm at the studio. Anybody, have we gotten any news on the fairing catch attempt? Because they were trying to catch both those fairings as well. Anybody seen any tweets on that saying not yet DOS? So it looks like we do not have any information on the fairing catch attempt. And also, we haven't gotten any information on, you know, was this a soft landing? Remember last time when we had, what mission was that? Where we landed off the side of the drone ship because of the unexpected winds at the landing zone. Wasn't CRS-20 because I was there for CRS-20 and it came back. That mission, the booster still soft landed after aborting itself to ocean. It was like an ATO, abort to ocean in that case, because it didn't like the winds. The winds were not as predicted, and the flight software said, wave off. I don't want to put a hole in the drone ship. I'd rather put a hole in the ocean because the water comes back together and heals the hole really quickly, right? So it landed off the side of the drone ship and didn't do any damage to the drone ship. Last Starlink. So the last Starlink was the one where it went in the drink. It took a swim in the Atlantic Ocean. Starlink version 1 L4. Thanks, Michael. But I don't think we've gotten any more information on whether this was a soft landing. Did this thing auger in Falcon Heavy center core mode, where you just see it like it's high to rocket stage, where it just disappears into the ocean all of a sudden off the side of the drone ship? Y'all remember that video where they showed it and the thing just like thump? There's like 2 frames of it going from, what's that? And it's disappeared. Maybe. Falcon Heavy side booster in chat. I don't know. I mean, you're saying the engine that shut down might have been an engine needed for entry burn. No official confirmation on that. That might explain why the entry burn had such a high angle of attack. Engine failed, first stage ran long. Entry burn tried to compensate. Dab dude, the failure on that engine was like seconds before it. If that flash was the failure, if that flash was an engine shutting down too early, that was seconds before MECO. So I don't know that this would be, wow, we have a lot less thrust, so we have to burn for another 20 seconds or something like that, right? I don't know that would be the case there. But again, I don't know. We're sort of looking at information. We have very limited telemetry. We have a couple pixels in the video from SpaceX, and we're just sort of armchair rocket sciencing it, right? Anyways. So I think what we're going to do here, how long is the delay? I read it as soon as I saw it in chat, Michael Ulrich. Hopefully pretty quick. We'll see. It's been past 40 minutes. Takes 40 minutes for them to catch fairing. I'm going to say they did not catch it. Again, we'll stand by for confirmation from usually Elon on information, because Elon gets a hold of this stuff and he wants to tell people and tweet about it, which is one of the reasons that we all follow him, right? So we will continue to. I could just do this. I could click on that button and I could just bring up his feed. See if there's any other replies. Nope, no other information. We're talking about meme sphere and stuff like that. So anyways, I think what we're going to do here today is go ahead and shut down the live stream. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us and for a little bit of armchair rocket science afterwards while we sort of watch the launch and see if we could figure out some things that went wrong. The important thing here is the Starlink satellites are up there in orbit. 60 more Starlink satellites delivered. SpaceX calls that mission success. So that is always a good thing. I mean, I don't know what to say. That's a good thing. Congratulations on that. As always, stay informed with NASA Spaceflight. You can follow us on Twitter at NASASpaceflight is the main account. I mean, I guess I could show it to you, like NASA Spaceflight. Just type it in. This is the sort of clearinghouse for all the information right there, NASA Spaceflight on Twitter. And we had Chris Gebhardt out there today as well. He was operating the camera. You can find Chris Gebhardt at Chris G. Oh, man. Chris. No. It's Chris G NSF, isn't it? Dad, blame it. Look. Chris G. Yeah. Chris G _ NSF. So Chris G was out there operating the camera today. There is Chris G's Twitter right there, Chris G _ NSF. And I'm your host. I am Das on Twitter. I hope I know what my own is. I'm K Space Academy. Because what I've been doing for the last 5 years is using Kerbal Space Program to teach rocket science. I go around to museums. I do presentations for kids at museums during STEM events. I stream on Twitch. I do all sorts of stuff with Kerbal Space Program, and that's where I've learned the brunt of my rocket science. Just from that. So that's me. I'm K Space Academy here on YouTube, and I'm K Space Academy on Twitter as well. Keep on looking around. If you want to find more information, that first link, NASA Spaceflight, is the right place to be, because articles that get written get tweeted out there. You want to follow Starship? Let me tell you. Do we have Starship? Hang on. Let me get back over to NASA Spaceflight. Hang on, my channel. It's not my channel, but it's NASA Spaceflight. Do you like Starship information? It's literally daily updates to what's going down at Boca Chica. Do you want to watch them smooth? That's an ad. I guess it supports NASA Spaceflight, so I'm okay with it, but whatever. That one pays us. Do you want to watch time lapses of what's going on at Boca Chica? NASA Spaceflight. Boca Chica gal out there, Mary, is some sort of machine gathering these videos every day. In literally just about every day, there's a new update from what's going on with Starship at Boca Chica. Also, if you saw the pop, Mary got some fantastic, Boca Chica gal, Mary got some fantastic footage of the pop when they were doing the cryo pressure test the other day. But these things come out constantly. So if you want to keep following along with things that SpaceX is going on, things that's happening with Starships, other launches, working on random space news. I mean, heck, we interviewed an astronaut at the museum event that I was at a couple days ago. A couple weeks ago at this point. We sat down with a NASA flight director, and we had just like a QA with the flight director talking about what goes on in the flight director's life. That's what you can find on NASA Spaceflight's channel here. But again, we'll go ahead and shut it down. No pics from this first stage landing yet, Leaf. We haven't seen anything. All we know is that there was no successful landing. There was an issue with an engine during the launch, during the ascent. And there was an issue with the landing. We don't know if it's in one piece. Was it a soft landing? Was it a hard landing? No information on that, but we will certainly hear from SpaceX at some point when we get more information. But I will catch you nerds later. We're going to shut it down for now. Again, hey, it's crazy times in the world today. Be safe. Take care of yourself. Listen to scientists. Listen to doctors. I hope I don't have to tell you all that if you're watching Spaceflight here. But please be safe and protect not only yourself but everybody else in the world that needs your protection, right? Even if you think you're super young and healthy, even if you think you don't have anything to lose, what you do today is going to affect what happens in the rest of the world. So be safe when it comes to all this virus stuff that's going on. And just please listen to the scientists and listen to the experts when they tell you to, hey, even if you feel fine or if you got a cough or something, stay home. So again, please be safe. Always happy to join you and happy that we can bring you this stuff, especially now that everybody's sort of stuck home, maybe not able to go places, maybe not able to see stuff. We will continue to bring you this sort of coverage as long as it is safe for us to do so. But for now, NASA Spaceflight's going to sign off. I'm going to sign off, and I will see you nerds next time. Thank you so much for all the support so we can keep doing this. I'm the guy that clicks to stop the stream too, so it's like weird outro times after I mean, I could just, whatever, nerds.